So our session today is called Developing New Ideas. And the goals for today are refining your main idea into a thesis statement. So taking the main idea that you have and making it into a real thesis. And then building arguments around the thesis statement. And using the outline from session 3, complete the introduction for the preparatory assignment. So the goal is that after today you can have an assignment ready to go. We're working at the introduction section, which should include the primary thesis statement and include a summary outline of the argument. So, Brandon's going to talk for a little bit here.
Okay, so we did this last time, but we are going to be covering some material that's in this Turabian Manual for Writers. We're going to cover it kind of at a pretty high level. There's a lot more detail in here, especially in chapters 4 to 6. And I know at this point in the semester, probably the last thing you want is more reading. But I think reading these 3 chapters will serve you well into the future, not just in this class, but as you move on in your study. So I would really encourage you to take the time, as you have time, to work your way through these 3 chapters. And before we get too much further into the rest of what Carl and I want to talk about, I want to just draw your attention to the fact that everything we're talking about today, the emphasis is on you making your own original claims. So this means that in this paper, it needs to consist of more than just this is what McClendon says and this is what someone else says, right? You have to go beyond just reporting what other people say and actually put your own voice into this conversation. So certainly you need to engage with what these people are saying, right? But this engagement must go beyond just reporting. So at this point, you've read most of your sources. You kind of have an idea of where you want your paper to go, the ideas and the topics that you want to cover over the course of your paper. But how do you actually go about putting these ideas together in a way that makes sense to your reader? So the best piece of advice I can give you is try to think about, anticipate questions and objections that your reader might have to what you're saying. We've talked a lot about how this scholarship is kind of a conversation, and that's in more of a broad sense with you engaging with people who have come before. But in another sense, it's a conversation between you and your reader, right? But it's a one-sided conversation because you're the only one talking at this point. So you have to anticipate what questions your writing is going to raise for them, what objections they might have to what you're saying, and try and address those as you go so that they will follow along with you, right? This can be hard because you've been spending all this time reading and researching and thinking about these topics, and you've come to your own conclusions. And so you kind of have all of these ideas in your head, so how could everyone else not be there with you, right? But I haven't been reading what you've been reading, so you need to bring me along with you, right? So try to put yourselves in the position of someone who hasn't spent the semester researching and think about where they might be reluctant to believe you or where they just don't know enough and need further clarification as you go. Once you've done that, then that's where you start building your argument around those questions and objections that they might have. So we do this all the time in face-to-face conversations, but it's more of a give and take, right? Like I said before, this paper is a one-sided conversation where you have to anticipate what your reader is thinking. So I just want to give an example. I need 2 volunteers to come up and act out a little scenario for me. Who wants to help? Anyone?
If you don't volunteer.
Yeah, I'll pick someone. Okay, Janet and Andy. How about Andy? Since he works for me. Okay. So, Janet, you are going to be person A, and you can be person B. So come stand with Janet, and they're going to have a conversation. It's a conversation between 2 students talking about the new semester. So, Janet?
Yeah. Hey, Andrews. I hear you had a hard time last semester. How do you think this one will go?
Better, I hope.
Okay. Why do you think so?
Yeah, I'm taking more courses in my major.
Sounds interesting. Like what?
Yeah, take history of art, introductions to design, and a couple others art classes.
Okay, so why will taking courses in your major make a difference?
Well, when I take courses I'm interested in, and I work harder.
That makes sense. What about that math course you have to take?
Well, yeah, I know I had to drop it last time I took it, but I found a good tutor this time.
Okay, so stay here. I'm going to have you do this one more time. But this time I'm going to kind of stop you every couple lines and talk about it. So we're going to start again. Janet, go ahead.
So Andrews, I hear you had a hard time last semester. How do you think this one will go?
Hi, thanks, Janet. Yeah, I hope to do better.
Okay, stop. Okay, so here, Janet's asking a question, and Andios is answering that question, right? So all of you, when you have your papers, you're trying to answer a question, right? If Andios is writing a paper here, the topic of his paper is, I will do better this semester than I did last semester, right? So the question that you are trying to answer, this is your topic, this is the claim that you're making. What is it you want your reader to believe? What's kind of your main point of the whole thing, right? Okay.
So, why do you think so?
I'm taking more courses in my major.
Okay. Now she's asking for a reason. Why should I believe that this claim you're making is true? Why do you think you'll do better this semester than you did last semester? And Andy gives a reason. I'm taking more courses in my major. Okay?
So you're talking about taking courses like what?
Yeah, first I would like to do history of art, introduction to design, and a couple other art classes.
Okay. So now she's asking for support. Okay, I've heard your reason. Now give me details that support that. Give me evidence. How do you know? What can you use to back up these reasons that you're giving me to believe your main claim? Okay.
So, why will taking courses in your major make a difference?
Yeah, when I take courses I'm interested in, I will work harder.
Okay. So Janet doesn't quite see why is it that if you're taking courses in your major, why is that any easier than a course that's not in your major? I don't see the connection here. Andy's making a connection. I'll do better because I'm taking courses in my major. And she's saying, I don't follow. I don't see why that makes a difference, right? So this idea of a warrant, how does that warrant what you're saying? How does it follow? Explain your reasoning, right? So he's saying, he's drawing this conclusion for her, right? In his head, it makes sense that if I take courses in my major, I'll do better. But for her, she needs this connection to be made. And so he says, when I'm in courses that I'm interested in, my major, I work harder, and so I do better than courses that I'm not really interested in, right? Okay.
So what about that math course you have to take?
Well, I know I had to drop it last time I took it, but I found a good tutor this time.
Okay, so now she's coming back to his original reason, which is that he's taking more courses in his major, and she's objecting. Wait a minute, here's something that's not in your major that you struggled with before. Okay, and so he is acknowledging that yes, this doesn't quite fit with my claim or my reasoning, but here is why I still think I can do okay, right? So you think about objections that your reader might have, acknowledge those objections, and respond to them as you go, right? Okay. Thank you both. Thank you. Yes. Okay. So, the beginning of your paper. So once you kind of have an idea of where you're going to go in your paper with your arguments, what claims you're going to make, what reasons you will give your reader to believe you, and what evidence you'll use, to support your reasoning, then it's time to think about the introduction. And there's a reason that we do this last, even though it's the first part of your paper. And I'm going to let Carl take it from here.
So I want to go over some elements of a good introduction. This is a little bit of a formula, and you can kind of use it this way or you can vary it up. One thing to note is that Jamie mentioned to me that you have a sample introduction in your syllabus, and that is without a doubt a better introduction than what I'm going to show you here. Mine is just to kind of illustrate the sample. So the first thing that you want to do is do something that captures the reader's interest, a lead into the story. Another thing you want to do is define some key terms. So if there's a key term that you're going to be using throughout your paper, make sure that it's introduced up at the front of the paper. And then lay the groundwork for your paper. Give a mini outline of what you think the paper is going to cover. So this is why this comes last, because this is after you've figured out the arguments that you're making and how they're going to flow together, and you can give a kind of synopsis in the first paragraph of what you think this is going to do, what's going to happen in your paper. And then finally, clearly state this thesis in a single sentence. It's possible to do a thesis not in a single sentence, but it will be a lot easier for your reader if they can spot right where your thesis statement occurs. So I want to give you an example of a very fake introduction that follows this pattern. First, a statement to capture interest. One of the pressing issues of our time is migration, yet migration is an age-old occurrence. Next, define key terms. Migration is the movement of people from one place to another for various reasons. Not a great definition, by the way, but bear with me. A mini outline. And here's where it gets really bogus. So don't pay too much attention to the content. We talk about the first move is that Jesus as a human baby migrated to Egypt. I bring in the support of my friend Layman Shucks and demonstrate the ways in which Jesus' teachings are dependent on an experience of migration. And then I build on Shucks' work to show Jesus' death and resurrection have a powerful interplay with themes of migration. And then I have my thesis statement. Migration is essential to the person and work of Jesus Christ. So you put it all together, and it looks remarkably like an academic introduction, even though this is complete bogus. So just to kind of show you how this, having your content together from what you want to do in your paper should make your introduction relatively easy to write in a kind of almost formulaic manner. There are definitely ways to vary this up and still have a good introduction following using different elements in different order. But this is kind of a thing that might make it easier to put the elements together. Now we want to give you time to work on your own, and feel free to ask and ask for help as it occurs to you. Jamie is here, and he can help you out too. So whatever it takes for you to get your work done here, we want to make sure that you can walk out of here with something that feels good to you. So thanks for your attention. Any questions before we